So in section 1.4, here's the I can statement. I can perform the four basic operations. So write the word operations right there. We'll talk about what those are in just a second, or remind you what those are. So perform the four basic operations with integers. We're still talking about integers. Got to have these down, got to have them memorized, what they are, how to work with them in different situations and that sort of thing. So what are the four basic operations? So when we say operations in math, I mean, when you hear the word operation, you might think a surgery or something like that. But when we talk about the four basic operations in math, they're things that are very familiar to you. So the first one is adding, subtracting is the second one. And of course you can fill in the rest of them. Adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. Those are the four basic operations: adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. So we've learned how to do each one of those with integers. So let's just do a quick review here as our warm-up. What are the rules for combining integers? So remember, combining, some people will kind of differentiate and talk about this in terms of adding and subtracting integers. We don't do that once we get past 7th grade or so, and I think it's easier just to learn how to combine them from the get-go and learn those rules and be able to deal with those. So the rules are this, okay? First thing is only one sign in front of each number. I'll make that look better. In front of each number. So we can only have a positive or a negative, can't have two of those next to each other. If we do, we use the rules for multiplication in order to do that. And if I haven't apologized for my penmanship in class or in one of these videos yet, Mrs. Hayrand in 5th grade got on me about my penmanship, and it's just never gotten any better. So I'll try and do the best I can. Hopefully between what I say and what I write you can get it. So the first thing is only one sign in front of each number. And then we check and see if they have the same sign. Same sign, find the sum, keep same sign. And you can shorten that and you could just say same, sum, same. And then the third rule, of course, is what we do if they're different. So we're going to say different signs, find the difference. So find difference, give answer, and this is where we got a little less specific. Give answer, sign of larger number. So what that meant is the bigger one in absolute value. So number. All right. So what are the rules for multiplying integers? Well, those are we don't have to use anything fancy, don't have to write anything out. We can just write this. We can just say a positive times a positive using the rules for implied multiplication here. Don't need a symbol or anything if there's nothing in between any two numbers or a letter and a number and things like that. It's just implied multiplication, so that's going to be positive. Positive times a negative is a negative. Whoops. Negative times a positive is a negative. And if you've got a negative times a negative, you end up with a positive. And again, when we were covering that section, we talked about a negative means opposite. So if we're doing the opposite of the opposite, we get right back to a positive and that sort of thing. And then the cool thing for division is the rules are exactly the same. So I'm going to write them like this. And again, I'm going to use the horizontal fraction bar in order to write those. And if you wanted to put these in parentheses, you could. That would be totally okay. Might not be a bad idea. I'm going to go back and put them on here just to indicate that we're taking a positive quantity, dividing it by a positive quantity and getting a positive. If we're doing this guy down here, we've got a negative divided by a positive, we end up with a negative, and so forth. So let's take a look at what we've got down here. So if you think back of when you first learned how to perform those four basic operations, add, subtract, multiply, and divide, you learned them and practiced them separately. So you learned them and practiced them separately. And in math, that's usually the case. It's usually easier to learn and practice things one skill at a time. So if you're adding a new skill, learn the new skill, practice it, add another new skill, practice that, and so forth. But the real test of whether or not you know how to do something is if you can mix the types of problems together and you can still get them correct. So now that we've practiced a whole bunch of multiplying and dividing integers, combining integers, all those four basic operations with integers, now we're going to mix them together. And that's basically what these next couple of worksheets are going to be, is what happens if we mix them all together? Do you still remember what the rules are? Do you recognize them in different formats? So if you take a look at this problem right here, you'll notice that gosh, is this multiplication? Is this division? We don't have any division symbols. Looks like it's just subtraction here, but remember, we're thinking of this as combining. So we've got two integers. One of them's positive 5, the other one's negative 7, and we need to put those together. We need to combine those. So I've got different signs, so I find the difference. The difference is 2. The bigger one of those two is the 7, and the 7 happens to be negative. So we end up with negative 2. And if I had $5 and I owed somebody $7, by the time I paid them, I'd still owe them $2. So that works out there. You'll notice on this next one here, we've got negative 19 minus a negative 12, or subtract a negative 12. But again, we see this issue right here that we've got two symbols next to each other, so we don't want that. So we've got a negative 19, and then this is going to be a plus 12. Again, we've got different signs in front of these, so we're going to find the difference. The difference between the two numbers is 7, and the bigger one is 19, and it happens to be negative, so the answer is going to be negative 7. Again, if I owed somebody 19 and I had $12, I could pay them, but I'd still owe them 7. Now you'll notice on this problem right here, we've got a multiplication symbol. We've got that little dot. So this is definitely multiplication. And you'll remember when we talked about this, multiplication and division of integers is a lot easier than combining them or adding them or subtracting them. So this is just a negative times a positive, so the answer is going to be negative. And 8 times 10 is 80, so there's our answer, negative 80. It's that quick. This is implied multiplication right here, so we've got a positive 2 times a negative 9. Positive times a negative is a negative. And 2 times 9 is 18. Here we've got a division bar right here. This is the way we'll normally represent division. We don't use this symbol very often, but we will see that occasionally. So we've got a negative divided by a negative. The answer there is going to be positive, or in other words, those cancel out to be a positive. And we've got 44 divided by 4, so that's going to be 11. So positive 11 is the answer on that one. Again, we've got division here, a positive divided by a negative, so the answer is going to be negative. And 120 divided by 12. Let's see, 120 divided by 12. Well, let's see, that would go in there 10 times, so the answer is going to be negative 10. If we take a look at this problem right here, we've got that big X for multiplication. Again, we don't see that very often, but we certainly could occasionally. So we've got a multiplication problem, and negative times a negative is a positive. Now, if you want to put the sign down there to remind you of what that is, that would be totally okay, not a bad idea. Then we've got 13 times 6, not part of our multiplication table. So if you can do this, let's see, 6 times 10. 6 times 10 would be 60. And then 6 times 3 would be 18. So let's see, that's going to be 78. If you have to stack these and do it that way, that's totally all right. So let's see, we'd multiply here, we'd get 18, and then we'd get a 6. Yeah, there's our 60 plus 18, so we get 78. Again, it's going to be positive there. So if you want to put the sign, that's okay. We normally don't, so I'm just going to write 78 and circle that answer. And then again, notice we've got two symbols next to each other, can't have that, so we've got negative 11. Positive times negative is negative. There's our implied multiplication again, like we talked about up above. Same signs, that means we're going to find the sum, so the sum is going to be 23. Keep the same sign all the way through, so that's negative 23. And then same type of thing here, we've got a 9 minus a -7. Negative times negative, that's going to be a +7. And again, this becomes a really familiar problem that we hopefully have done in elementary school, but let's think about it in terms of the integer rules. These are both positive, so they have the same sign. We're going to find the sum, that's 16. They're both positive, so the answer is going to be positive, and there we go. So again, the trick is making sure that you understand what's going on here, that you know whether or not we're combining the integers, multiplying the integers, dividing the integers, just exactly what's going on. So make sure you practice these. We've got a couple worksheets on these. Again, mixing these operations together and being able to get them right 100% of the time really is the key. You've got to be really fluent at this. Know the rules, know how these work, get them right every single time, and you'll be in great shape for the test. All right, good luck.